Hello everyone and welcome to this video. Now today I'm going to be doing a album review. Going to be looking at this record. It is Hats by the Blue Nile. So I'll just be doing my usual thing in this video, giving a bit of background information about the album, then showing you my vinyl copy of it here, and then looking at each of the album songs in detail. So this was the Blue Nile's second album, released on the 16th of October in 1989. So Blue Nile are a kind of Scottish three-piece band. They kind of formed in the early 80s, maybe even the late 70s, released their debut album, A Walk Across the Rooftops in 1984 to a lot of critical success, but not a lot of commercial success. However, between that album and this record coming out, the band built up a bit of a cult following, A Walk Across the Rooftops kind of got by on a lot of word of mouth recommendations. So by the time it came to Hats being released, there was a lot of anticipation for their next album. However, making this record was a rather torturous process for the band, with an entire album's worth of material scrapped. So following the release of A Walk Across the Rooftops, Lynn Records, the band's label, were very keen for them to follow it up quickly. So they were sent back to Castle Sound Studios in East Lothian, where they had recorded the debut, and they were kind of trying to sort of come up with some new songs. However, it was very clear at this stage that they didn't have enough material for an album, and the material that they did get, they weren't too happy with it either. And I guess this was a slightly different arrangement as well to making A Walk Across the Rooftops, because they were actually living at the studio whereas when they made the debut, it was a bit more laid back, whereas they were all kind of basically living in each other's pockets, and kind of there was a little bit of inter-band tension kind of going on in the early stages of making this album. So studio sessions continued for quite a few years, and then the record company though were really not too happy at the fact that they weren't really getting anything out of them, so they actually got sued by their own label, who demanded music off them, saying that the Blue Nile had breached their contract. They were then subsequently thrown out of the studios to make way for another band, and basically returned back to their native Glasgow, in a way to kind of get their act together again. However, this returning to Glasgow and kind of having a little bit of breathing space seemed to work. It kind of fired off something in Paul Buchanan, whose writer's block was seemingly overcome, and the band very much the band very much when they returned to making the album in 1988, had a much clearer musical direction they wanted to pursue. So apparently the album was then the other half of this album took a mere weeks to make. So upon its release in the UK, this album reached number 12 on the charts, which was a big improvement from A Walk Across the Rooftops, and as I said, they built up this kind of cult following, so there was a little bit of anticipation for this album. And in the US it got to number 108, so still not quite taking off commercially there. The record received rave reviews in the countries, with one reviewer calling it possibly too perfect, which I guess is a kind of criticism one could possibly label the Blue Nile, but other publications praising its mood, and kind of with Melody Maker magazine writing that it's big music that leaves you feeling small, very still, and very close to tears. So that kind of gives you quite a good idea what to expect with this album. It's then subsequently been ranked on various music publications lists of the best albums. So Q magazine placed it at number 92 on the 100 best British albums, and at number 38 on a list of the best albums from the 1980s. So I will just show you my vinyl copy of it here. Now, I got this a couple of years ago. It has since been reissued, but I got it in a record shop in just outside of Manchester, Real Around the Fountain Records, and I couldn't believe it when I'd seen it. It's an original American pressing, so it's got its shrink wrap, and it's got this hype sticker on it here, which has kind of quotes quotes and reviews from some of their like music contemporaries. So you've got like Kurt Smith from Tears for Fears describing it as original and inspiring. The Blue Nile are a breath of fresh air. You've also got a quote there from Phil Collins, who says, quite simply, Hats by the Blue Nile is the best album I've heard for ages, maybe even years. So that was kind of put on copies to kind of sell it like a little bit more. Also, like this price tag at $2.99, that is most definitely not what I paid for it. That I'm sure was the original price sticker on it there. So probably times that by 10 at least to kind of get an idea of like how much like this set me back. Like a lovely copy of it here. Very basic packaging wise though. We just got the front and back cover there. Lovely cover, very moody image there, which I really think fits the music. And the record, there's no fancy inner with my copy, it's just on this label here. So as I said, this is an American pressing, it's on A&M, and I think in the UK it was, as I said, I think it was released on Lynn Records. Okay, so I'll now go over each of the album songs. I'll score each track out of 10 and then use those scores to give us a overall percentage marking for the album. So the record kicks off with a song called Over the Hillside. Now this is a bit of a slow burner, like off like an opener, you know, it's kind of builds up really well. It's a song about kind of, I guess, dreams and kind of like aspirations and that, and kind of wanting to get out of a kind of mundane sort of situation. He sings like working night and day, I try to get ahead, but I don't get ahead this way. He sounds very, Buchanan sounds very tired and kind of resigned, like kind of like singing like the verse, but then the track kind of germinates and kind of builds up like into something else, you know. He kind of then, by the end, you've then got this rallying call of tomorrow I will be there, just coupled with this grand, elegant kind of synthesized string arrangement. As far as I know, like all the strings on this like are synthesizers, but they sound brilliant. It's, as I said, it's a slow burning opener, which I think really comes into its own in like the second half. So I would be giving Over the Hillside a 9 out of 10. Okay, and now we get probably the most well-known song on the album, which is the Downtown Lights, which I've got the 12-inch single for it here. So very similar, subtly different cover, like for like the single compared to like the album. But this is, for me, one of the greatest songs of all time, and I don't think that's being like an overstatement either. You know, this is, it's very evocative, this song. It's set in a kind of you can very much imagine a kind of sort of thriving kind of city centre, you know, of all like described like the downtown lights, but kind of like the narrator's kind of like not part of the action. He's very much like a kind of like an observer, like an onlooker. The lyrics are just full of longing, you know, and it's a simple lyric, you know. There's a lot of like lines where he's just saying like it's all right, the downtown lights, but just the way he sings it is just, there's so much feeling, and like you can really and there's a lot of like hidden meaning, like in depth, I think, like in lagging like this track. And then again, it's the way it builds up, you know. It kind of for the first half, it is quite straight ahead. It's got a very steady beat to it, very kind of similar sort of like glistening kind of like production work on it. But then there's a kind of second half where you get this kind of very clean sort of guitar riff. It's a bit Nile Rodgers-esque like sort of thing, and like then suddenly like this coda comes in with, again, probably one of the, like certainly one of the Blue Nile's best vocal performances, like that line, like I'm tired of crying on the stairs, where he just sort of bursts it out. It's just so full of feeling, I think. And yeah, it's a great song. This was, as I said, it's a single, but it didn't do too well like as a single. It reached number 67 in the UK, but a great song, and yeah, easily one of the Blue Nile's crowning achievements there. Let's go out tonight. Okay, we'll go back to the album now for the the last track on side one, which is Let's Go Out Tonight, which is the mood comes down a lot with this track here. It's a much slower track, full of again longing and almost like kind of like desperation, like on like this song here. You know, he's very much like the kind of like the narrator, like on this song, trying to sort of cling on desperately to like a dying like relationship. And again, it's kind of set in this kind of city where it's everyone's really busy, but he's just feels very lonely. You know, it can be, these sort of places can be very lonely, like at like times. So he sort of sings like, where the cars go by all the day and night, why don't you say what's so wrong tonight? I pray for love coming out all right. So again, he just sounds so. It's a bleak song, this, I think, but it just really fits the mood like of the album. So I would say it's probably not one I would play in isolation off the album, but I think on it, it's a really good kind of building block like on the album. Okay, and then we open up side 2 with Headlights on the Parade. Again, another song which is very evocative of a kind of city kind of scape. Probably the most upbeat track like on the album like as well. And also probably I'd say most akin to the material on A Walk Across the Rooftops. You know, it's got that kind of like this kind of sequencer like part to it, and this kind of very kind of tuneful piano, which kind of like leads like the song. Again, it's very vivid, this one here, and again, it's got all the kind of hallmarks like of a brilliant like Blue Nile track. So this was another single from the album, and it reached a rather poor number 72 on the UK charts. So yeah, another brilliant song there, and I would give it a 10 out of 10.
I know it's over.
Okay, and then we probably get, I'd say, the most somber moment on the album now, from A Late Night Train, which is, like, lyrically this one, again, very much, concerns this kind of dying, like, relationship, and again, Buchanan's vocal is just there's so much feeling in it, you know, where he's kind of singing, like, it's over now, I know it's over, but I can't let go, and yeah, just a very pensive sounding song, you know, a kind of piano, and then you've kind of got a kind of distant trumpet, so it's quite ambient, like, in places, like, as well, and again, very, like, atmospheric, you know, it kind of just sort of takes you away, this song. So yeah, From a Late Night Train, really good. I think it's also the shortest track like on the album, which I'm probably quite glad about, you know, because it feels longer than it probably is, simply because it is like so slow. But no, a really good song, would also get an 8 out of 10.
It hurts me a little bit more.
Okay, the penultimate track now, there's only 7 songs on here. Penultimate one is called 7am, and again, this is a bit more upbeat, this one here. You've got a kind of more like electronic kind of like production like on this one here. You've got a kind of, it sounds like a kind of a kind of very slowed down kind of funk kind of bass line, like which kind of like carries like the song like along. And again, lyrically, it's another kind of one of like these kind of desperate love songs, basically about kind of longing like and pain. He sings to it like, each time I fall for you, it hurts me a little bit more than I want it to. And yeah, again, you've got some really good, again, guitar passages like on this song. So again, it's another slightly different texture to maybe some of like the other tracks like on this album. And then there's just a glorious ending. It's kind of really comes into its own again, like in the second half of this track, where you get all these wonderful guitar lines starting to intertwine and kind of like overlap like with each other. It just sounds great. So yeah, 7am would get a 9 out of 10. Okay, next one up, and the closing track is A Saturday Night. Now, this one, I've got the 12-inch single for it here. This one is a really great ending song. Again, it's got a kind of hopeful feel to it. You know, the album does have a certain arc to it where it kind of, this song does feel optimistic, you know, it kind of like sort of like the narrator like on this song kind of sings about like a ordinary girl who'll make the world alright, she'll love me all the way, Saturday night. So it kind of, yeah, he's been sort of rescued from his kind of despairing situation like on like the previous tracks, but still has this kind of nagging question of like, who do you love, who do you really love, kind of going through it. This was the most successful single from the album. It reached number 50 on like the UK charts, which is possibly a bit odd. Like, I'd say probably the 2 other singles maybe have a bit more of a kind of commercial feel to them. This one's probably like the slowest like off like the singles, like I would say, but no, it is still a great song, and again, it just builds up so well. The kind of second half, you've got this gorgeous string arrangement on it, which just interacts with Buchanan's guitar like so wonderfully. So a great closer there. Saturday Night would get a 10 out of 10 from me. Okay, so overall, Hats by the Blue Nile would get 91%. So I think this is a glorious album, you know. Compared to Walk Across the Rooftops, this is a lot more sophisticated, I'd say, and professional, you know. Like, Walk Across the Rooftops is quite electronic, quite cold sort of album. This one's definitely more multi-layered, but it's still got so much emotional rawness to it. And I think, like, as you kind of probably tell from some of my comments, you know, it almost runs like a concept album. This, like, you know, about very much like a lonely person, sort of like observing kind of like a city's nightlife around him, and that watching kind of like headlights of vehicles and sort of people enjoying a Saturday night and sort of so it's very much an album like sort of set in a very specific place, and I think they really capture that mood like really well. And I like also how this album, I mean, yeah, there's only 7 tracks, but I don't think anything really like outstays its welcome on here. Like, you know, like, I mean, yeah, none of the songs like are in much of a hurry to kind of finish, but again, like, as I said, nothing really drags. Everything is just such a beautiful like atmospheric like sort of like listen. And I think it's a record which has certainly stood like the test of time. I mean, it maybe does have a 80s gloss to it, but I think it's a kind of sound which is probably coming back like into vogue like a little bit like these days, and it is a record which does receive widespread acclaim like to like this day, and I'll just finish with a kind of anecdote from like one of like the band members who said that kind of shortly after this album came out, I think it was maybe like either like Robert Bell or Paul Moore were in a Glasgow pub, and they were kind of chatting to some of like the people like in like the pub, and they kind of talked about music, and kind of the person like in like the pub said, have you heard of this band like the Blue Nile, to the actual members, such as their ability to remain completely like anonymous, and that's kind of how they've kind of gone about like the whole career, like, you know, sort of like just making like sort of like not wanting to be stars, just making music for the love of it, like, you know. So I think that yeah, it's definitely one of my all-time favourite records here, and if you've not heard it, definitely check it out. It is well worth a listen. So yeah, that's been my review of Hats by the Blue Nile. I hope you have enjoyed, and if you've got any requests for future reviews, please do leave them down below in the comments, and I will see you all next time for the next video. Goodbye.